Okay, we're live, and my goal today is very similar to what my goal last time was from yesterday, which is to play around with tRPC. I ran into some issues yesterday in the setup where I got the server set up, and then when setting up the client, I wasn't getting the types um, erroring out. So when I put in the wrong types, I wasn't getting proper type checking on the client side. And after some, um, playing around and trying to debug for far too long, figured out that I wasn't importing the server package on the client side. And this wasn't really apparent in the documentation, so I ended up creating a ticket um, or an issue on the repo, which where I learned it was a peer dependency. I probably should have figured that out by looking at the package.json on the client side or just in the tRPC packaging, and I didn't. And so they recommended I update the docs. So I added a PR for that. And now there is some clarity if you happen to have separate packages for your server and client, like I did, some indication that you have to install both on the client side. And then just looking at the branches and what have you here, I realized that there is a next branch which has version 10. So if you look at the tags, there is an alpha release from 3 days ago, and the API is changing in version 10. So I thought, okay, let's play around with version 10 from scratch, and let's start from the beginning, right? Yesterday I had a not so great time trying to figure out the typing, but hopefully this time around the typing will work, and we might run into other issues because this is an alpha release. So there might be some issues or bugs or what have you that we might run into, and that's fine. The whole goal of this is to learn and play around. If I get time, or maybe in future sessions, I'm hoping to, so play around with tRPC version 10, figure out the new API, learn about it a little bit, and then try and see if I can go end to end, which is have a Vue app on the client side, and then tRPC on the server side with Connects and Objection Js as the database, and then see if I can do some CRUD sorting and filtering, and then abstract that into a template where I can quickly spin up new models that have filtering and sorting functionality built in by default. And so there'll be a lot of playing around. I haven't really given it a lot of thought. The whole purpose of this is to figure things out as we go. So this alpha site is the site for the tRPC documentation. They have a project here that I might be able to copy from 11 days ago, updated a few days ago. And then otherwise, here's the quick start, and we can go ahead and try and make things work here, go through the docs bit by bit and try and figure things out. But to start, just like I did yesterday, let's try and get going with creating a backend. And let's yarn init here. And let's add Typescript and initialize that. Also get init as well. Typescript. Okay, and then I want to essentially add Express and then add tRPC alongside that. So just taking a look here. Okay, all right, so on the server side, I want to do a few things on the server side, in fact. So I'm going to open up the Express adapter and take a look at some of the docs there. So here they're saying yarn add Zod as well. So I'll go ahead and add Express to that. And then we can begin setting this up by creating an express server-side router for tRPC. Okay, great. And they have the code out here in the sandbox conveniently. All right, so let's create a source directory and get into server.ts. And we'll just copy paste as this is, straight up. And then take a look at the code. So here it's grabbing an init tRPC, which it's not using yet. It'll use this down here in a second. And then, or it is using it, my bad. But there seems to be an error. Has no exported member. Right. So the problem here is, this is like, I should have seen this coming. So the problem here is I'm trying to do alpha, and the alpha docs are assuming that the alpha version is the latest one. So what I'll need to do is probably get this version here. And so let's try that again. Actually, I should just be able to go into my package and change this. And we'll just fix this. We won't, we'll just fix it to this version, yarn again. And what I should have done earlier was over here, I should have done that. And then that would have given me the correct version from the start. Okay. So back to server.ts, and now this should not give me any issues. And it's calling this function here, which returns a function which is being called again. And here's how we define our router. So we say router, and now we pass in an object, and a property of this object is the query or the mutation. So the procedure, what are called procedures now. So you have a procedure here and a procedure here. A procedure can be a query or a mutation, and you pass it the input here, and you define it all here. I'm going to copy paste this over here because I don't have a model to show. We'll return Frodo on this side and just return the input as it is for now. So this will define our basic router. Let's get back to the Express server. All right, so we'll be defining some kind of a context. And then using Express as well. So I'll just copy this bit again and import Express as well. And I could probably just copy this whole bit. And now we're passing in the context to our init tRPC. Let me get rid of some of these issues here. And nothing is in our context, but presumably we could add something like, you know, user ID. And for now, it'll just be an empty string. And then I would assume that here, that context gets passed in. The user ID string is passed into our procedures. And here we'll instantiate Express and hook it all up. So yeah, I'll just put the export as the last line. And on the /tRPC endpoint, we are setting up our Express server. So that should do it. Here I have an error saying I need types for Express. So let's get that going as well. And now everything should be properly set up. I'm just going to open another tmux window so I can switch back and forth without having to exit Vim. Okay, that seems like I have the server working. Let's see if it'll start up. I should probably add some scripts here. What I'll do is I will see if I could just copy stuff from what maybe this project already has. I was hoping to just do a quick copy, but that's fine. I'll just end up just copying this bit here, and then I'll need TS node to start my server. So I'll end up adding that. And I should probably add nodemon as well. And I believe I should be able to do this. And when I do yarn dev here, that starts up my server, which will restart every time I make a change. And then here, I can go ahead and try and do the get aspect of this. This will give me an error because the input is expecting JSON. So my ID, for example, and that's the JSON. And I get my ID passed in, and I get my response. So name Bilbo is being returned in result and data. Cool, so that means our server is running. Let me just play around a little bit here. If, for example, if I define this as a number, and I came back because this is a string here, and I refresh, this fails because it's expecting a number. And now I get that number back. Let's change this back to a string and try the number. Server's starting, and now it has, and this fails. With a message here. Oh, okay, and the message is JSON as a string and bad request. And so I'm assuming that the server side would parse this, and then we'd be able to display it. Or the client side would parse this and we'd be able to display it. Okay, I think that's our server. Let's get that committed. And let's add a client. So I'm gonna, okay, I don't have a front end. And let me use my template. And here I could probably just start this to make sure everything is working off the bat. And let me use port 5050. Everything is not working off the bat. I have to run yarn, of course. And then start the server. And this is giving me my basic template. Okay, let's hook up tRPC on the client side and see how that works. So back in our quick start, now we will install both server and client, and then I still have to remember to add the alpha here. So let me grab the version. And let's get the version up here. I did an npm install and I want to do a yarn add. Not that it should. Okay, there we go. And then I can probably just jump in here, and so this is defining a router, and nothing on the client side here, but we can play around with the client definitions over here. And so the first thing we want to do is get our app router. So I'll just copy this whole thing here. I could probably define, okay, let me get into main.ts, but I'll define tRPC.ts here and just import that from here. Okay. And now I want to fix this to my server side, which is in the same directory structure. Get into the source, and from my server, from my server, I should be getting the app router, and let me make sure that that's getting picked up, and it is. And then we're initializing the tRPC, and this should be 4. And then we're creating a client proxy here, although the docs don't seem to have that imported on this setup here. So I'll just yank it and add it here. Whoops, didn't want to do that. And add it here. And now we have a proxy, and we can use that proxy to query. So what I'll do for now is create a main function and just call it. And when I refresh, I would expect to see that work. A few things are happening here. Let me just log this so that okay, so now we're logging it. I see this coming up with an error. Mutation does not exist on type. Okay, no problem. We'll try and figure this out. And here, for example, if I come in, it does currently give me my query. So let's try and figure out why this is giving us an error. Create user does exist. And it seems like what is create user? Okay, so when I did a go to, it took me straight. So this is one of the features is here, if I'm here and if I go to a definition, it will take me directly to my server right from my client code, which is super cool. But this, if I will go to query, that's defined here. Let me see if I can find, so it's mutate, not mutation. And I found that out by going to the query definition, and I happen to see this over here. And so change that to mutate. And that seems to work. And if I, for example, get rid of everything here, it's asking me to have an object here with a name string. And for example, if I change this to LOL, it should give me an error. It is. The line is not coming up just because of my setup, I suppose. There we go. Okay. So there's the line, and it's telling me that LOL is not a param. And name is, and that seems to be working. Let's go on the app here and see if we're actually getting results on the network tab and whether we're getting okay, so I jumped into Vim here, so let me just quit this up and yarn dev. I want my Vim in this window. Okay, so if I come back here and I refresh, I'm getting an error for get user because of cores. So let's go ahead and add cores to our Express server. I'm going to type in Typescript just so we see any, okay, this is way too much happening here. But in effect, I have to do these two things, add cores and add the types for cores as well. So let's do it on the server side. And then on the server itself, okay, that's interesting. Right, because it has its own. Okay, so on the server itself, I will import cores from cores, and then down here we can app.use cores, and that should restart our server. Coming back to our app, let's see. And that seems to have worked, and we're getting that data back as an array that has a result object and then data in it. And the create user, same thing, an array with a result that has a data property. When I go to the console, however, because I did a console.log, that is being all parsed out for us. So we just see the data bit from our calls. And let me see here. If we go into our tRPC, I'm not able to find files properly. And that's probably because these are being treated as two different projects, unfortunately. Yeah, that's my problem. Oy. Okay. It's because I added my Git repo here and I did a Git init here. So I'm going to have to just get rid of all of that. And that's fine. That's upsetting. Sorry, Git init. That's upsetting, but that's fine. So now I should be able to search all my files from everywhere and tRPC. And here, if I look at the type of this, now the result is typed as well for us. And we have the entire thing set up, and I could, for example, do photo.id.name, and that it will get auto-completed for me. Coming back here, I get the name straight up. Okay, so let me recommit this as an entirety. So let's get the whole back end and front end. Setting up front end and for tRPC. I'm just committing here for my benefit. I'll probably, once I get to structuring some of this, rewrite everything from scratch anyway. This is just me playing about. Okay, so maybe for our next step, I can try and set up the database side using connects, using Objection Js, which will take me a bit. I haven't done that in many years. And once we have that set up, let's get some seed data in here, and then let's try and create some CRUD operations for maybe your typical blog post or employee directory or whatever. Okay. And maybe I could take a look at the code here for some inspiration as well. Just to see how things are set up, because I do want to do a setup of some sort. Now here they're using next, so the directory structure is kind of given to you. And so the directory structure here is routers on this side, and then each router has a bunch of procedures defined. And I think I can probably copy that bit where on my server side, I'll have routers and models and so forth, so on, and all of that will be defined there. And what's cool about it too, since we're using something like Zod that works both server side and client side, I'll probably have a shared directory at some point, make this a whole monorepo, and then my validations can go inside the shared directory and be used both at the client side and the server side, and have shared validation code, which is super cool. And I do think, like, for example, and this is ideal, right? tRPC is the experience essentially becomes as if I'm just calling this method straight on the server and everything is just handled for me. Whether in this case the protocol happens to be HTTP, but theoretically it could be anything. But all of that is abstracted away. So you just have this proxy dot get user, proxy dot create user business, which is nice. And then go to definition works straight up, so you're right in the function that's being called from the client side, which is nice. Now, for libraries that aren't shared front end back end code, for example, like let's say you have front end JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever, and your back end is something like Rails. Ideally, your Rails server should be able to spit out a TypeScript file, given the definitions that you've made there, so that now you get this kind of data checking and type checking here, and response types right off the bat. And there's no reason why that can't happen. You don't have to redefine all those things on the front end JavaScript again. Those should be auto-generated based on your Ruby class definitions for server-side things. So there can be a tRPC type thing in Ruby, for example. If you wanted to use a Ruby server, the part that needs to be covered is, okay, now you're generating this the TypeScript file that eventually gets imported on your client side, and now you can use your favorite backend, and everything's fine. Okay, so let me use Objection Js. I know Prisma is sort of the popular one that all the kids are using these days, which is fine. I've worked with Objection before, and I want to continue to play around with it and learn a bit more about it. So that's what I'll be using. And it uses connects in the backend. So let me get back here and okay, gotta yarn out the whole thing. And for our purposes here, I'm just going to use SQLite 3 instead of something like Postgres or what have you. For now, I can avoid setting up. I don't have Postgres installed on my computer, so I can avoid setting up a Docker file or what have you to get an instance running. And then get started. They have some examples in here, but essentially we will define a connects connection, pass that into our objection model class globally, and then now we can extend models here. We'll also have to create a schema, and we can use migrations for that. So maybe now, I mean, even beyond tRPC, what my real goal is to set up some kind of a framework around tRPC, including different libraries and trying to make things work together, so that then I can create a template off of it, which I can use on future projects. So I can just, dgit clone a project and then get going. Just like I have a front end template, I want to have a back end template. So we'll need to initialize connects first. What's interesting is the documentation is now pointing to maybe not where it intended. Okay, we're installing connects. We've installed already SQLite 3, and now it's asking us to do this. And now I do remember there being like a connects init. I'm not seeing that. So let me come out here, and what if I do yarn connects init right here? Wonder what happens. So it'll create me a connects file. Okay, let me let me delete it right away. And let me do that again. With help. And so I can pass it a -x and ts, I believe. So that'll give me TypeScript, which is what I want. And I have a file here. Do I want it living outside my source directory? I probably don't. Yeah, I think that's fine. So I'm going to move it into source, and let's get in there and take a look at the code. So it's starting off with SQLite, staging for Postgres, and production, which is fine. We'll just leave that as is for now. And this will just be our server, our database. And I don't think I need to make any changes here, apart from the fact that I think I want to place this somewhere else. So I don't want this here. Maybe I can create a models folder, or very similar Rails. I kind of want to create a DB folder. So let me just move this here to a DB folder. And now I have this here. And I'm assuming once this happens, the next file will, the database will just be created in the DB folder. And I'm okay with that. What I will need to do is probably just add a git ignore on my back end. And let's take a look where I'm ignoring any SQLite 3 files. Okay, great. So now I have a next config. What I probably want somewhere is to be able to pull this in and then set it up. So the way I'm thinking about this is maybe I can have an environment.ts that gets pulled into the server. And in that environment.ts, I can probably have whatever configuration or startup or whatever I need for most of my services. So database, if I'm doing WebSockets, they can be connected there and initialized there. And then I can, if that file gets too large, I can pull it out into its own pieces. So let's do that. And then let's get that set up. And then here I'm going to need to do something like this as well. Yeah, okay, that should be fine. So I'm literally going to have to do something like this bit here. And so that environment file can probably live in a config, very similar to Rails again. Let me get that in here. Can I use this? Fantastic. And this configuration should just come in directly from my text file, which exports the config. So, and there's that at default, yeah. What am I doing wrong? Okay, let me just, for simplicity's sake, export default config here. Okay, if I can type config, that'd be great. And we can do it. It is done. Okay, so that bit is good and done. And then here, so really needs this information. So I can just say config dot development, and let's import config. here. And then let's import environment.ts on our server. What did I do here? Okay. And this could just be, sorry, I didn't want. And this could just be an import straight up. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to do anything else here. Maybe this should just be the first thing that we import. And that should be it for my server. Everything does start up. I wonder if that's enough to get a SQLite server started. Okay, I'm seeing an issue already. Use null as default. Builder insert, set the, and I would assume I would set this in my connects file. But I don't know where. And I wonder if this will give me that being the connection. No, it doesn't like that, so it would be up here. And that seems to have started. And now I can probably take a look to see if on my backend source DB, I don't have a file here. I'll probably have to insert something before it will actually create the server. So let's create a model. And then I'll probably, yeah, let's create a model, and then I'll probably seed some data. So I'm going to have to look at connects for seeding purposes or whatever. Maybe they have some, it doesn't seem like there's any. It's a recipe book. Let's see if there's any guides for like migrations. Complete migration example. Yeah, so just creating a table here with these things. Whoops. It's like a very detailed creation. You can turn out, you could change or chain create tables. It seems what I really want though is to be able to use Connex's migrations CLI. So I would have to, so here's the init stuff. And then I want to do exactly something like this, which is migration make. And let me see what happens when I pull this in my backend. I mean, I should be able to run something like this, but I expect it to fail because it needs a connects file. Yeah, so it's probably saying, hey, things are failing because things aren't configured properly. And so I should be able to give it a connects file. And that would be source. This ought to work. All right, it seems like it has. And that's my migration. And then now I can go ahead and I was hoping I could just copy paste a thing here, but I'm just gonna have to schema builder, do something like this, for example, and then run my migrations. Okay, I think that's fine. What I want, though, in the spirit of setting up some kind of reusable commands, I want to set that up for connects. And then, so I don't have to do that over and over. I'm trying to see if I can find the examples directory here to see what Prisma does off the bat. So Prisma has a migrations folder and does all this. And because I put my connects file here, I would assume this directory, so it all gets set up from the root folder of the connects file, which is nice, right? That's what I want, DB migrations, DB seeds, and so forth, so on. But I want to be able to not have to pass it, the connects file, over and over. So let's just take a look at package.json. So they have DB reset, DB seed, DB migrate. So I could just probably have something similar, but for connects, and just add a few more things here. Okay. Let me just copy these, although I'm going to rename this. So DB seed, DB migrate, going to leave out the dev. And then I want something like DB make migration. And that should be what I had here. So it's next, it's connects is pointing to my connects file, saying migrate make. So let me just migrate. What am I doing? Migrate make. I don't need to pass it the migration name because that will just come in automatically. And then let me just take a look at some of the other migration commands here. So migrate latest will get me to the latest one. Migrate up as one. So I think for me, migrate should just do migrate latest. But I don't believe I need to pass that in. And that should be good. And then, is there anything about seeding here? Seeding, okay, there's a seed make and a seed run. So that's great. Let's get that in here as well. So seed make here. And I'd assume there's some Typescript thing here as well because of the file that it would presumably generate. And then I can just copy that here and get this to run. And I don't need this. I do need to add commas, and that should give me the ability to migrate make, and migrate and so forth. So let's test this out here. Let me just actually test this out here. So I should be able to do something like yarn-db migrate make posts create posts table. Fantastic. So I get something like this, and then I should be able to copy paste from somewhere some idea of migrations. So precisely something like this. I don't need too much detail here, but this could be posts. ID, I want a title, and then I want a body for now, and that's good enough. And then here, I'm assuming that there's some delete, remove, destroy, drop table if exists. Exist post, that should be it. And now I should be able to migrate. Yarn-db migrate. And now if I do something like source db ls, I should see a def SQLite, and maybe I can go ahead and create a seed file and yarn-db seed make seed posts. Okay. And it has some default code here. I wish the migrate make had some default code as well. Delete all existing entries, and then add stuff. I think I probably want to use objection to do this. So let me actually begin to do that. This is like a lot of work just to start off. But that's the whole idea of having a template, is these things will be set up for me. So these are JavaScript examples. I want to take a look at TypeScript examples if they have any, because I believe there'll be some extra typing that's required in the TypeScript version. This is just a TypeScript file. It's no good. I know that somewhere we just saw TypeScript. So let me just find that. Right, so some definitions here would have to be done in this manner. And then here, for example, a movie can have many actors. Let me just quickly take a look to see how that's defined here. So this is relation mappings. We define actors and then define the type of. Okay, so many to many relation, that makes sense. Movie can have, an actor can have many movies, and a movie can have many actors. Define the class and do this business here. And a person can have many movies. Okay, cool. You would have to create a table to have those mappings there. Okay, so for my purposes, I just need this bit here. And now I can start to think about creating something like a models thing here, and maybe I can begin with post.ts. This is the only required property, and there will be an ID, there will be a title, and there will be a body. One thing that I realize now is that in my create table for posts, I want this to be text. In fact, yeah. And so for my purposes here, just to simplify, I can just remove source db dev, and I can run db migrate again. Okay, so now I have a database with strings, and now for my seeds, I can import my post model, and then I can seed it. So let's do that. I think this is fine. Just for usability purposes, I'm just going to say post model here. I wonder if I can do something like can I do something like del or something? Or I guess you'd have to. What does this give me? Just query. I believe this is the equivalent. But I'm not 100% sure. So want to await this. And then insert. Let me go take a look at what that looks like. Models, relations. Let's see if I can find an insert somewhere. You can call insert. And that would just look like this is just look like this. So person.query.insert. postmodel.query.insert. This probably fails because these aren't the fields that get inserted. And for my purpose, I think I can just do that. And what I want to try and do is use Faker or something just to generate like 100 posts or 50 posts or whatever, and then grab them on the front end side. So let me do that. And I kind of want to see what else query gives me. Can I do del here without delving into that? And then I wonder if there's like a SQLite UI. There's got to be something, right? Like someone's have to build like a connects UI browser so I can just get into my database directly. That would be nice. But for now, let's get Faker and let's well, no, let's not do that. Let's just keep it simple. Let's blog about our breakfast, and the body is I ate eggs. I don't need to make this any more complicated. Just one entry is fine. Let me just make sure this is working. Interesting enough, I'm not using connects at all here. And let's see if dbseed run. We're not found. I think it's just dbseed. I configure that. And it doesn't like it. No database connection available. For query, you need to bind. Okay, so the problem here is that we haven't configured anything here, so we'll have to import our environment into our seed file. I was hoping, okay, yeah, so go back here and let's get config environment. And now, because in an environment file, we have this business here, that should propagate all over the place. And we should get it working. Let me just make that the first thing. And now if I run this again, my expectation is that if it, yeah, it'll work. And if it didn't work, at least it would have given me a different error. Let me run this again. And it should work again the second time as well, because we delete and then we reinsert. And that worked. So let me see if all of this is working. We're kind of flying blind on our database. I don't have a UI to get into our database. So let's go on the client side, or the server side actually first, and hook this up. We're still using, like, we haven't created our own routers or whatever. So we're just in this area here, and instead of get user, we're getting post. And this can be the ID, which is a number. And here what we'll want to do is we'll want to do post model dot query dot find by ID, and then we'll give it input we'll just give it the input. And here I'll just do this. I could just return. What happens if I return straight up? Because the class this returns is the objection query builder. I think I need to await here. And now when you await it, it returns something slightly different, but it is still the post model. So I'm super curious how this turns out. So let's go on our client side. And that, okay, so now it says, hey, get user doesn't exist, so get post. And this should give me an error. And I wonder what Bilbo will be. Bilbo is post model. I wonder if that creates any kinds of issues, because I don't have these. I don't have any of these. So what happens if I do this? Well, first of all, let's just see what it looks like. We get an error. No such table posts. Probably don't want that kind of error message exposed to. I don't see any errors pop up here, which is interesting. I would love for there to be like when I have exceptions, I want there to be a stack trace here, right? Is that not, we don't want that? Okay, well. So I have the environment. I'm grabbing post model from here. And then I'm just saying, hey, find by ID. And it's telling me, hey, you don't have anything. So does that mean when I ran, you know, all the seed stuff and all the migrate stuff, was that a lie? I would have expected all of this to fail. So for example, if I removed again my server and I did db seed, this should fail, right? Because it said, hey, the post doesn't exist, no such table posts. And so now I can migrate again. Seed again. So I know that's working, which means there's probably some issue with something else. So let's try and debug that. And really, and this is the only place I have the error, which is annoying right off the bat. So I wonder if there's any no such table posts. SQLite error. My thought was, hey, maybe you're looking at different DB, but there's only one DB defined here. We're getting the model from objection, so we are getting the environment. Do I need to restart? No, does that do that? That does not seem to be the case. Well, this is frustrating. Right. Okay. Postmodel.query.find by ID. I don't believe I'm doing anything ridiculous here. Input is a number. Well, none of that should matter because really it's not finding the data. So actually I should be able to do something like this. So this should be available to me here. Right, and then I should be able to do main. And so now every time the server starts, for now, it should do that. So okay, so now we're getting a DB error, no such table. Oh, okay. No, that doesn't make sense. Okay, fascinating. That's fine. Let me go into my seed code. Well, I can't even do any of this because it's saying, hey, database not found, like, or table not found. Which is odd. Could it be related to the directory path? Does that change at all anywhere? Because it's probably not finding the SQLite database at all, I would assume. So what happens, for example, when I do this? Let me remove the database entirely and then come back here and restart. Expect this to fail. Same error. So the likely case is that it's not finding. They're not pointing the same DB, I assume. And so let's try and figure that out. So the likely case probably is when you run connects through the command line, it uses the connects file for the path. And likely when I run it in the server, it's not doing that. So that's fine. Let's make this based on the path of the directory. So I should be able to get dir name come in here. Let me just make sure that this is what I would expect it to be. So I am seeing their dir name, and now I can use something like maybe path.join in order to have the path defined. And I mean, that's fine. Look, we're working with sort of these technologies from the ground up. So we're going to run into a bunch of issues like this. But the whole idea, again, is once they're settled, and I move on. So and then here I could probably do something like path.join, dir name this, and now regardless of where you run it from, it's going to have the same spot. Okay, so now my expectation is that when I run this server, that I get, well, I need to migrate and I'll do all that business again, so that's fine. Let's DB migrate again. Seems like I lost. Something happened to my console here, and I just had to reset in order to get back. I don't know, to make things work properly. Okay, so now I've done the seeding, and now when I do yarn dev, that main function will run, and it should get that post, and it does over here. All right, we're back in business. And when I refresh here, so this will, do a to.json on it, it seems, on the server side prior to the return. But the model that I get is post model. And I mean, it's fine. It's not ideal because on the client side, I don't want something like, Bilbo dot. Like, I don't have these available to me. So does that mean that I have to do on the server side, I need to do a toJSON to have this? So let's get the post here. And then I return post dot to JSON. Okay, sure, if it exists. And now if I come back here, Bilbo is what? Model object post model. That's even, okay, that's not available. I thought it was available. Look, what's this? Oops. Oh, I need to pass it. Streaming to JSON. Okay. So I'm getting the JSON here as I would expect. And on this side here, objection model object, post model. So if I do a dot here, yeah, I am getting ID, body, and title. So this is correct. Like, this is all I should see on this side. And I wonder what happens when we define things like has manys and what have you. Whether those will come through here or whether they would come through in some different way. I don't know. I don't know. Probably they won't come through here. But okay, we'll figure that out later. It seems like we have a situation where we have our database stuff set up. So let me just connect that. Let me just commit that, which is just our database stuff. So these are all the changes we've made surrounding our database. Getting objection Js next. So the next thing I want to do is I want to try and organize my route. So this should become like a post router, and I merge that route into here. Okay. That means here, alongside models, I will also have routes, and I'll have a post route. Or posts route. So I guess these could be plural. Let me take a look at the library here again to see what they've done. So they use the singular. And then there's list, there's by ID, there's add. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm gonna probably just follow this format here. No reason not to. So singular all the way, I guess. Okay, server.ts, and let's see very quickly here. So there's a post router, and it's just this. Something like that. And the T, where does it get the T from? Because it shouldn't be initializing everything. So it does get the T from some tRPC setup. And we should do the same. And should that be part of my environment? I wonder. So let's see what they've done. All right, so they have a context that comes from here, lives here, and then they got this here. I think that's fine. Also curious what super JSON is. Error formatter, okay. Maybe I can use this to log errors on the server side as they happen. Okay, yeah, so it seems like I will get the tRPC set up and have a tRPC file on the backend side as well. So where does it go? I kind of want to put it under config, right? Like maybe all these. Then should this have gone under config as well? This file here. Maybe everything else goes under config. So and then this will go here. And I'll export this. And I need some context. Okay, so let me put everything in here for now, including the context and everything. And then later on, if that needs to get separated, it gets separated. But this needs tRPC express. And that's coming from here. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. And then because we're exporting this, we should be able to do this. And it seems like we still need tRPC express here and create context. Should be exported as well for now. And then I still need this. I do want to keep this here. That's fine. Okay, so now we have a file for tRPC, and then if I go to my routes post, I should be able to import this. Fantastic. And now I should be able to define my routes. So they have an env.js as well. But this is for the environment schema. Oh, cool. Okay, and what's this underscore app? Business. I wonder if that's something related to... Ah, okay, so these are just... This is everything. So every time you add a router, it gets pumped in here. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it would have been nice to be able to do this programmatically, but I suspect that we can't because these need to be typed. So there's just an app.ts. I think I could just call this a router.ts. Okay. So under routes, let's just have a router.ts, and this router.ts will we'll just have our entire router, and router. Well, this won't. Okay, add import from post, so it kind of. Oh, because I exported post router, of course. That makes sense. And then I can probably just get rid of these. And this is how it's going to work. And then don't need this. I will want that there. And I will want this over here. But I don't need. So app router will now come from here. And that's fine. So now this is much cleaner. I guess the question is, do I just continue to export app router from the server.ts, or whether I pull this into here? For now, I'm just going to keep it here because that's where the client is getting it from. And it's not really being used anywhere else. I probably should have copied this and move it here. I'm okay to make this something like by ID. So the implication is that it's by ID. That doesn't seem right. How is this? What? Yeah, that's not right. This doesn't belong here. This belongs here. What was that? Okay, so that was weird. Let me just get out of here. There's probably a bunch of things that don't make sense anymore. So let me just figure that out. Ugh. I happened to add it in the wrong place, so I didn't realize it. And then I think server will have some problems. And why is this a problem? Oh yeah, I'm not using T. I think that should be it. If there's any other issues, so this is in my router, right? Because the path has now changed. So on my router here, this needs to be removed, and that should be fine. Okay, so here essentially what we've done is we've reorganized our router. And here we have this, and I want to be able to get a mutation in here as well. CRUD, right? So, okay, that's fine. Create, and I would define an object here, and then really it's title and body. Does this have a text? No, it's a string. And then here I would do something like insert. And input is body and string. And let's see if insert is typed. And well, it won't be in here, but I wonder if this would. So for example, if I had done something like, Lala, would this fail? Yeah, Lala string is not assignable, but now if I change this to title, it works. But it doesn't care if they're all required or not required or what have you, it seems here. I wonder if there is a way to do that. But for certain, if there were some fields here, for example, if I added Lala z.string, I expect this to fail. No, it doesn't care. I guess I expect it to fail if I remove both of these. Yeah, okay, so as long as something is present, it ignores the rest. Okay, that makes sense now. Okay, so the expectation here is that I should be able to create from the server side and then return the post as well. What would this be? Same old post model, and then I just know that I have to do toJSON in order for it to appear properly on the client side. Now our client side should be broken. And it is, because it doesn't find a query procedure for get post. So let's fix that up. We have one on the back end and the front end. This probably won't live here like this anyway. So now I should be able to do something like proxy.post by ID and then query. And this takes me right to my code here. And then here, that just be 1, for example. And this works as expected. And then let's create a post.create. I need to call this a mutation. And when I do that, I would have expected this to be, okay, yeah, so now it is available here to me. Let's just output all of Frodo, and maybe the title can be Frodo. But it's not happy because it needs a body. I wonder what happens if I do this. Will the server still create it? It doesn't, because there's an error. And the error is not legible here, but presumably its body is missing. So our server is fairly strict. Body something better. And this will have created here. And the result should be ID 2. I got this. If I refresh this, it should create an ID 3. And now I have end-to-end database hooked up. Well, I guess we can check these off. There's some advanced stuff in tRPC that we didn't take a look at, for example. So we did do merging routes. We ended up doing merging routes, where you define a post router or user router, for example, and both of these are in your app router. Okay. We didn't play around too much with context, but the idea being, for example, that you can pull in, the headers decode and then get the user, and then have that user information available in your context all across the board. So we'll probably get to that at some point. Middleware, again, now there's some isAdmin middleware, which will fail if the user is not admin. Okay, great. And the middleware can change the context as well. Although in this case, user was already on the context. Route metadata. What? As auth. Okay, so you can pass in on the procedure some metadata that then gets used in your middleware. So if has auth is false, this should be something like needs auth through, and then needs auth false, and this should work, and this shouldn't. Even though they're being passed in both to the same procedure. So this way you can control through options what you want. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. I guess this is just getting authorization in context. Okay, yeah, we can use what's this? So query secret query returns the secret sauce. I'm assuming this will return some token. Right, so we have, I guess this is really authorization. Yeah. And right, we're authorizing here. Cool. Okay, you could define your output as well. Okay, very interesting. Okay, pretty cool. Inferring types. Okay. Error handling. So this is the what errors look like. And earlier I was like, hey, how can I handle errors? This is on the next server. But we should be able to define an error here. And so an error does come up here. We should be able to write it to the server at the same time that we pass it back to the client. Transformers, super JSON. I need to look into super JSON. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. Kind of a way to marshal some advanced basic objects. So instead of just pure data objects or JavaScript objects, the ability to use some other types and get them over the wire and then have them recreated into the objects that they are. So you can have a set on the server side and pass it to the client side, and it gets treated as a set on the client side. Okay, I think that's good enough for today, or for now anyway. And we're almost here, right? Like we have CRUD here. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what I intend on doing, or what I'm hoping to do here. So we have this, we can have update, and let me take a look at how update works on objection. find one, patch and fetch. Okay. So kind of doing an update where this ID exists is one way of doing it. Person.query update. Is this updating everyone? Okay, because there's a where here, there's no where here. Update and fetch. And where's patch? Okay. I'm just kind of skipping reading the paragraphs and trying to look at the example here. So patch and fetch. Just give me the number of effective rows. I can patch by ID, which is really an update where, but I guess I'm getting this API to specifically do it by ID. Increment a value atomically, so you could do things like raw. Really cool, and also like averages or whatever. Very cool. Patch and fetch, which is probably maybe what we want to do. Right, patch and fetch by ID, get the updated person, and then return the updated person. Patch and fetch, what would this do? So this lives on the object itself. Kind of like a patch and refetch, and it updates the person model object. Okay, so in our case, I think we probably want something like this. Post.query, patch and fetch. So this, I would need to pass in an ID here. I wonder what goes in here exactly. It's a bit hard to understand. Definitely not going to understand this. Okay, that's fine. I'm wondering for an update whether, like, should I do this? And then this becomes input.id. And really this becomes input. And that's my update. And now we're beginning to see some basic things here. For example, I can template out post model and generate this basic CRUD for a lot of these, right? Like, actually, this should just probably be very similar to this. So delete, just taking an ID. And if you want something extra, then you could do that, right? You can add extra things here, but this can become my CRUD model. So this is a mutation, and I want to delete by ID. Sends the number of deleted rows. This is a composite key. So for us, it's just this. delete by ID, and we can just return the number of deleted rows here, and just the input, because the input is the number. Okay, yeah, so we have CRUD. And then maybe next time I can take a look to see how I can generate these. So look to see if there's template generators, a package to do template generation, and learn that. And now right off the bat, we have CRUD for our routers. And, you know, we could potentially have other things like, you know, bulk update, bulk delete, bulk create, so that we could do more complex operations here, and kind of just have an example one. Maybe this comes in like it's commented out to start. Okay, super cool. And you know, maybe in this case, ID is required, but the rest are optional, so that we only update the optional one that you send. Other things I'm thinking is that there can be probably some Zod object definition that lives with the post itself, right? So maybe this will export a basic idea of, you know, the Zod thing and how they're required, right? And then we could come out here and maybe make this partial. So I'm wondering if Zod has the ability to take in an existing Zod object and make some or all of the fields inside it partial. And that's the stuff that we'll take a look at later. So let me just commit this. We refactored out tRPC. We created routes. So there's a global router and then a route for each one. Really, maybe we could rename this app router. Where are we here now? And then server side, we refactored out the stuff. Front end tRPC. Now we don't really have a front end per se, but speaking of templating, ideally, ultimately, what I want is templating on the back end and then the templating on the front end, so that right off the go, I can, you know, infer the fields, generate a form automatically for those fields, and then create, update, list, and delete right off the bat for any model that I create. And this way I don't have to code those things over and over. And so I do want to create a template both on the back end and on the front end. But we haven't really done too much of a like actual front end work apart from just some tRPC mappings. Okay, cool. All right, that's all I have for this session. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to finally getting some type of a templating system. Even copy paste is good, but some kind of a templating system for both the back end and the front end. Awesome.